Okay, so this week we read about deans of women and deans of men, and we talked about the differences between the deans of women who were highly organized and cared very much about legitimizing the profession, and the deans of men who were kind of good old boys and cared very much about the traits that were involved in being a good dean or being a good administrator. So I want to carry through a little bit more of that theme. We talk about learning the history of higher education or learning the history of a lot of things so that we don't repeat it or so that we can learn from it. So, my discussion question, I guess, would be looking at the institutions that you've been associated with, whether they be your undergrad, whether they be where you did your internship, whether they be where you're currently working at VSU, certainly, and looking at the administrators that you've worked under. If you've had a male boss or a female boss or somebody in charge, what differences in leadership do you see between males and females? Um, and what do you think is attributed to just those traits or maybe the gender stereotypes that would cause that? Um, for instance, Dr. York mentioned in class that women who are in leadership positions, when they exhibit the same leadership traits as men, they're seen as bitchy and non nurturing and things like that. And so I'm curious as to why women cannot lead in the same way as men and be accepted as just that that's the traits of a leader versus that's the traits of a woman who's not ladylike. Um, there are studies that have shown that women are better leaders in the fact that they are more collegiate and they're more apt to produce change. I read some of these studies the other night as I was kind of searching for something to talk about. Um, so I'm interested in everybody's experience with female leaders and male leaders and how their leadership styles are different and what you attribute those differences to. Do you attribute them to trait theory? Do you attribute them to just men and women do things differently? And how does that affect our jobs today in higher ed? And how do you think that affects the student population? Do they have role models to identify with? And lastly, the articles talked a lot about access and how access is not mere admission. Um, Obviously, women are admitted to universities widely. Now, do you think that they have full access? Do you think they have the same access as men? And if you say no, which I would venture to say no, is it because they don't take advantage of the access they've been given, or is it because there truly is a barrier to that access? I would argue that women don't take advantage of the access they've been given because of long, deep-rooted socialization that they're not as smart as men. They're not supposed to be smart, and also this idea that women can't be both smart and powerful career women and still be mothers and wives. So those are the topics I'd like to explore this week, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on those.